I didn't know what we did last time he'd run. That's what still gets me. I thought we had more time.
I've never been the kind of person to get overly sentimental about pets. When I was growing up, animals came and went. Farm dogs mostly. Good boys, every one of them, but they had jobs to do. Nobody really talked about feelings when one of them didn't wake up one morning. Just a quiet nod and maybe a, "He was a good one." Then we get another. But Murphy was different. I got him when I moved out on my own. I was 24, fresh out of college, living in a barely furnished apartment with secondhand everything and a constant sense that I was faking adulthood. He was just this scrappy rescue mutt from a shelter, half lab, half something smaller, maybe corgi. Who knows? Big ears, big eyes, and a tail that wagged like he was afraid if he stopped, he'd lose his place in the world. He saved me, honestly. Not in some dramatic, pull you out of a burning building kind of way, but in the quiet way that counts. When I couldn't sleep from anxiety, he curled up next to me and slowed his breathing until I matched him. When I came home crying from a job I hated, he dropped his favorite toy at my feet like, "This fixes everything, right?" I named him Murphy because it sounded sturdy and a little goofy. Like him. We lived together for almost 11 years. Through 2 long-term relationships, both failed, 3 different cities, and more emotional highs and lows than I care to recount. And through all of it, Murphy just stayed. Unwavering. Loyal to a fault. He was the one constant when everything else in my life felt like it was spinning or slipping away. He made friends wherever he went. Baristas remembered his name before they remembered mine. Neighbors brought him treats. When I started dating my last girlfriend, Liz, she fell in love with Murphy before she fell in love with me. "He's just so expressive," she used to say, laughing as he huffed dramatically when we ignored him for too long. She moved in with us after a year. Things were good for a while. We built routines. Weekend hikes, movie nights with Murphy snoring on the couch between us, long walks on quiet evenings. I started to think maybe this was it. The life I've been waiting for. Then he started slowing down. At first, it was subtle. He didn't jump into the car anymore. He waited for me to lift him. The stairs became a struggle. He started to sleep more, and sometimes he'd just stand in the middle of the room, confused, like he forgot what he was doing. I took him to the vet. The news wasn't good, but it wasn't terrible. Arthritis. Age. "We'll keep an eye on it," they said. Meds helped. For a while. But it wore on us. Liz started staying late at work more. She was distant, distracted. One night, she told me, "I don't think I can do this anymore. It feels like our lives revolve around your dog." She moved out a week later. I didn't fight her. I didn't have the energy. After she left, Murphy and I fell into our old rhythm. Simpler. Quieter. Sometimes unbearably quiet. But he was still there. That was enough. Until one morning, I found him curled up in the corner, trembling. He wouldn't eat. Wouldn't look at me. I rushed him to the emergency vet. They ran tests. I sat in that sterile, too bright waiting room for 4 hours. When the vet came out, her voice was gentle. Too gentle. Murphy had cancer. Aggressive. Inoperable. Best case? A few more good months with meds. Worst case? Weeks. I drove us home in silence. He laid in the back seat, barely lifting his head. I kept looking at him through the rearview mirror, trying to memorize every detail. That night, I lay on the floor with him and stared at the ceiling. I thought about all the things we hadn't done. The places we'd never gone. Murphy had never seen the ocean. The next morning, I called in sick. Then I used a week of PTO. I booked a small cottage near the Oregon coast. Dog-friendly, quiet, nothing fancy. Just us. The drive was long. 6 hours. Murphy mostly slept. I talked to him anyway. Told him stories from our early days. Reminded him of things I wasn't sure he remembered. When we stopped for gas, I bought him a cheeseburger. He perked up enough to devour it in 2 bites. When we arrived, it was dusk. The ocean stretched out in front of us, wild and gray. I opened the car door and unhooked his leash. "Go on," I said. He hesitated. Then slowly, like he was remembering how, he stepped out onto the sand. I followed him. He sniffed the air, took a few shaky steps. Then, in a sudden burst of energy, he ran. Just for a few seconds. But he ran. I laughed. I hadn't laughed in weeks. We stayed on that beach until the sun disappeared. He splashed in the shallows, barked at the waves, rolled in the sand. I took 100 photos I still can't bring myself to look at. That night, he curled up in the blanket nest I made beside the bed. I reached down and rested my hand on his back. He sighed in his sleep. "Thank you," I whispered, "for everything." We stayed there for 3 days. Every morning we watched the sun rise over the water. Every night I carried him back from the beach, wrapped in a towel. He passed 2 weeks later. I came home from work and found him in his usual spot under the window. Peaceful. Still. I sat beside him for hours. I didn't cry right away. That came later. In waves. In gasps. In silence. I buried him in my parents' backyard. They didn't say much. Just held me while I shook. People tell you that grief gets easier. It doesn't. Not really. It just changes shape. Sometimes, I still wake up reaching for him. But I think about that beach. His tail wagging. His eyes bright. The way he barked at the ocean like he was challenging it. Like he belonged to it. Maybe he did. Maybe that's where I'll go when it's my time. Back to the sea. Back to my dog. Back to where he ran one last time.